我特别喜欢和欣赏您刚才提到的那个观念，就是说，我们讲到女性的，可能更对有一些疾病是更具有易感性的，但是这并不意味着女性就是脆弱的。然后我们可能也要避免，就是对于女性，这个性别本身所有的这种偏见和刻板印象哈。那作为女性的话，就是您认为哈，就是通过您的研究，还有您个人的这样的一个生活经历，您觉得哪些时候是女性大脑健康的这个关键时期啊？如果从年龄上来讲的话，那大概是从几岁到几岁呢？为什么这个时期是比较关键的？可不可以从就是大脑科学神经科学的角度跟大家来讲一讲
？Yes, gladly. Thank you for the question. It's actually one of my favorite topics of conversation when it comes to females' brain health, women's brain health, and neuroscience. In the book and in my talks, I describe the 3 Ps, the letter P, which would be puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause, which is the transition to menopause. Those are very important phases for a woman's brain development and aging. So when we're born, all of us, men and women, we have a neuroendocrine system that connects the brain, the neurological system, with the endocrine system that is responsible for reproductive function. So for women, this very important connection is between the brain and the ovaries. And we're born with these connections, but in reality, this system is really activating at puberty, where the brain goes through a remodeling that leads to a maturation and growing and really sets the stage for a functional, mature adult brain, which is also enabling a woman to carry out a pregnancy and take care of a child later on. But it comes with glitches. As we all know, puberty is no joke, right? There's a lot of things that can happen. But then there's a relative stage of calm until a woman gets pregnant. Pregnancy is a major renovation project on a woman's brain. It leads to changes in the architecture and cognitivity of the brain, which helps the woman prepare to become a mother and take care of a little human who basically is helpless without their parents for a certain amount of time. And that also can come with glitches, right? This upgrade and this maturation can lead to the baby blues or to postpartum depression or to brain fog or to changes in sleep patterns. And that happens every time a woman has a child, right? There's a maturation, but there's also a phase of vulnerability in some ways. And that all ends in menopause, or the transition to menopause, which is the end of a woman's reproductive life. You can no longer bear children after menopause. And the brain goes through another phase, another remodeling that is very important, because at that point, the brain understands no more kids from now on. Let's prepare for the next phase of a woman's life, which is no longer reproductive, but is certainly just as productive as any other phase of life. But that also comes with glitches, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the insomnia, the depressive symptoms, the brain fog, and for some women, an increased risk of neurological diseases like Alzheimer's.
就是您刚才提到，就是我们女性在人生的不同阶段，特别是围绕生殖这件事情就会面对很多的挑战。那在这个过程中，我们因为大脑和卵巢之间的关系然后我们会有一些荷尔蒙的波动，会出现一些，比如说在怀孕的期间和在这个围绝经期，我们会出现比如说脑雾睡眠的问题然后有各种各样的就是在生理上感觉是不太舒服的那个状态。那这种变化，这种就是比较负面的这种体验是不可避免的嘛？那比如说我们通过在书上的这个建议如果我们去调整我们的饮食，还有睡眠，还有运动这样的一些方式的话，能带来多大的一些改善和帮助呢？
I really like the term uncomfortable conditions. Yes, I'm told they can be quite uncomfortable. Yes, so what happens is women's brains are wired to respond preferentially to specific hormones like estrogen and progesterone, whereas men's brains are wired to respond in preference to androgens like testosterone. Now, to be clear, we all share the same hormones. It's more like the quantity that is different, and also the substrate that is responsible for utilizing these hormones. So I think it's helpful to think about hormones like part of a key and lock combination, where the hormone needs to open, the hormone is the key that needs to open the lock, and the lock is called the receptor. So women's brains are full of estrogen receptors, which is one reason that we define estrogen as the master regulation, as the master regulator of women's brain health, because estrogen is so involved in a lot of different functionalities that are important for brain health, from neuroprotection and neuroimmunity to stimulating blood flow, energy, connectivity, structure, biochemistry, and also supporting the brain and protecting the brain from aging and diseases like Alzheimer's. So something that seems important as a preventative strategy is to make sure that these uncomfortable symptoms that can stem from losing the protective effects of estrogens are counterbalanced by lifestyle adjustments, appropriate medical care, which in some cases may include hormone therapy for relief of the symptoms, like the hot flashes, the sleep disturbances, the depressive symptoms. They're not for all women, so it's also really important to look at non-hormonal medications for those who don't want hormones, or are not eligible for hormones, or can't take hormones, and don't do well on hormones, and of course lifestyle. And I think that the lifestyle factors that you mentioned are extremely important: a healthy diet, exercise, sleep hygiene, and stress reduction are really the pillars of women's brain health in midlife, along with appropriate medical care.
那另外就是有一些人，比如说我在翻译这本书的时候，已经在我40岁了哈。那我看到这本书真有一种相见恨晚的感觉，然后我也希望有更多的人能够知道大脑健康的重要性。但是我相信很多读者可能会像我一样，已经到了自己人生的40岁，甚至50岁，甚至觉得说家里的父母哈，他们的大脑已经到了一个就是老化的这样的一个阶段，或者说可能正在面临这个老年痴呆这样的这个疾病的这个折磨哈。所以接下来的问题是关于说咱们的大脑的老化有没有可能逆转呢？或者说通过你书里面介绍的一些方式，能不能让我们有一些改善？有哪些具体的行动的建议吗？如果有的话，能够做的第一步是什么？
I would encourage everyone to think of their brain more like a muscle. There are things that we can all do to strengthen our brains and make them more resilient for a lifetime of use, right? We can feed our brains properly, we can exercise our brain properly, we can take care of our brains properly, and their brains would perform so much better for us at any age and walk of life. Can you reverse aging? That I don't know, but something that is quite interesting is that there is a disconnect between chronological aging and biological aging, right? Chronological aging is your age that was assigned to you when you were born, but biological aging is way more subjective, and different people, different brains show different trajectories of change over time, where some brains age quite rapidly and not in a healthy way, whereas other brains age less rapidly and remain functional and strong and resilient for life. So what are the factors that have been linked with improved resilience in graceful or gentle aging? It's really good genetics. I mean, genetics are important, but they're not the whole picture, right? They're not the entire story. Medical health is a very strong determinant of brain health, especially in the long term. You want to minimize your risk of cardiovascular disease, of metabolic disorders, thyroid disease, metabolic damage, hormonal damage, all the factors that can negatively impact brain health. And then lifestyle really has been shown time and time again to be a major predictor of brain health in the short and long term. And now we know that, for instance, over 40% of all Alzheimer's cases can potentially be prevented by addressing modifiable risk factors, many of which having to do with leading a healthy lifestyle really around the board.